Hello, Don, and hello, Michael. We are um, welcome to the show. We're still
Hi.
waiting hi there. We're still waiting a couple of minutes because like 2, 3 more people want to join us, and then we're gonna go into the topic. But until then, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, Philip. And good to see you, and Dave, and you, Don. Good to see you.
How's the campaign going?
Yes, I heard from the Highland Times the other day. They asked for a picture,
Nice.
but
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know whether they've published anything.
Okay.
Is that a weekly? Is that a weekly paper or?
I'm not sure about the Highland Times. I only know about the Northern Times, and they're
Okay.
weekly. I do think that the Highland Times is weekly as well.
Mhm.
I have to say that quite a few newspapers in the north, I would say, have been quite nice. I think their reporting about our party, about us, was very balanced. They quoted us correctly, and there have been nasty responses. I had quite a few very, very nasty comments on my Facebook account, and a friend of mine here from Durness, he just texted me that he got banned from Facebook now for defending me.
Mm.
And I said, thank you for defending me, but don't get yourself banned. But it was I can very clearly say that the only nasty responses to me and my past did come from activists from the LGBT community, but also I also did get a few positive mails from and defenses from people from that community, so that was nice.
Good.
You've just reminded me of something, Phil, that I wanted to ask you. You've been in touch with Core Issues Trust Dr. Mike Davis?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Would you be able to give me his contact details, or should I just look up Core Issues Trust, Google it, and
I'm gonna try to get his. I do have his email address. Would you be so kind and send me an email, just a reminder, so I don't forget?
sure,
That would be great.
will do, Phil.
Thank you.
Do you happen to know?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know whether he has had much to do with transgender folk?
I do not. I do not.
No.
It's quite possible that he didn't have a lot of transgender clients. There is an online community for transgender people that, for example, detransition. So it's possible that they go more down the route of the online support, but I could be wrong.
All right. Do you have contact details for that? I'll email you.
Yeah.
As you said, Phil.
Yeah, there are. I'm not super involved with that community. I did talk to some people that two people that did transition, but I'm not intimately familiar with the community, unfortunately.
Sure.
Michael, when would you like to come up and canvas Inverness and maybe stand in front of Tesco and represent our good party?
Yeah. I think Richard wants to come up at the same time.
All right, nice.
So the three of us and get some pictures. So I'm still thinking that final week in April.
Good, yeah.
And I think you said that you're pretty free, and it would probably be a Thursday.
I'm free until probably the 30th of. So on the 23rd, 24th, I'm free, but on the 30th, I'm busy because I'm going down to London for an interview by a radio station.
Okay. So, but as soon as we've got something firmed up, I'll liaise with you, Philip.
Perfect.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. That worries me. Thursday, Michael. Election forum. You're not going to leave me in charge.
Well, thank you for the evidence you sent through. That was a really good witness statement. And it's funny. I mean, that's almost exactly as I saw the situation. Now I rang the police, and you just cannot get through because there are so many people ringing up as Stasi agents complaining. So that
about
whole
COVID, about
about
COVID
COVID.
restrictions.
Yeah, the whole of 101. When you ring 101, it's all about COVID, and you just cannot speak to anybody. You're just a machine. So I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go through.
Yeah, I had the same issue. Unfortunately, I had a unfortunate incident with my dog, and I tried to call the police, and I didn't get anywhere. It's quite. I think the police is painfully overworked with a lot of nonsense, not being able to focus on more pressing matters. So, Fraser, how was your dinner? Are you okay?
I'm going to eat it, but I'm going to stay and listen. And once I finished it, I can carry on. So I'm kind of multitasking at the same time. So
okay,
so
perfect.
Just do we need to do? I'll just moderate in the background, but I'll chip in when I get a chance.
Thank you very much.
On you go. Okay.
Okay. I think we're going to start with the topic, and people that join us later, well, they're going to have to catch up with us. So, welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk About. My name is Philip Tanzer. I'm the candidate for the region Highlands and Islands, just like Michael here on screen, for the Scottish Family Party. The views that are reflected tonight in the talk are not party policies. These are individual and personal views, but usually they do reflect a lot of what we stand for as a party. This week's topic is royal values, outdated or inspirational. And obviously I chose this topic because of the very sad death of Prince Philip, which in some ways was expected because he was quite old, but it was very tragic nonetheless. And I thought I didn't want to talk too much about the death part. I thought it would be nice. Hello, Masedi. Hi there.
Hi. Hi.
I thought it would be nice to talk about life, about the very, very long marriage that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip had, what it represents, if it is, if this kind of marriage is outdated nowadays, or if it's still inspirational. And I also wanted to talk about certain values that, at least in my opinion, the royal family, especially Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, represent. Now, in regards to these values that we might connect with the royal family, with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, what are values that come to mind? And just raise your hand if something comes up, and don't be shy, please. I don't want to drag you into the limelight. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I mean, the royal family.
Your sound is very low. Much better.
So if can you hear me better?
Yeah.
I didn't realize this was on. I thought it was. The royal family is tradition. These are traditional values, and the way that the royal family's been, I mean, it dates back, as far as the countries were formed. So things have changed, and they have their set ways, and some of the things you could say are a bit outdated, and some are old-fashioned, and they have been modernizing. But as far as an institution for the country, they do so much good. And, if people know anything about Great Britain, they know about the royal family. The problem in Scotland is anything to do with the royal family and Great Britain becomes a unionist, separatist, nationalist kind of question. And you've got people who will not support the royal family in Scotland just purely because they want independence. But I grew up in a military.
I would like to very much like keep away from that and try to just look at them as a family and what they are, and not bring too much the like unionist divide
No.
into that. But yeah.
But that is the problem in Scotland, is you do get, if you talk about the royal family, you do get into that. But personally, so I grew up in a military family, so the heads of the military have always traditionally been the royal family, and my father was in the Air Force for a number of years, and I went to Queen Victoria School in Dunblane, and I met the Duke of Edinburgh. I met him in 1987 when it was actually my last day at school, where, because it was a military school, the last day of school every year, we had parades every month on a Sunday. But at the end of the year, there was a big parade, and all your parents would come, lots of military personnel, lots of people would come. But every 30 years or so, the school had colours like a regiment, and they would be represented. So you'd get new ones because they'd only last so many years. The old ones get hung up in the chapel. And this time was Duke of Edinburgh was coming to give us our new colours. So it was a very, very big event. There was thousands of people there. And I was a guard commander on number 6 guard, and I posted a picture of myself and the Duke of Edinburgh. So I met him, and I took him down my guard of 30 odd boys, introduced him to all the boys, and he was really interactive with everyone, and he really cared, and there's some tiny ones there as well, and some older as well. And then later on there was a walk around, and he met my family. And my aunt and my cousin were from Canada, were over, and my cousin was about 12, and he had a Canadian flag, and he was waving it and shouting, trying to get attention. And because it was a bit different, the Duke came over to speak to us, and he recognised myself, and he said, "Oh, who's this?" I said, "It's my cousin." He asked him, he said, "Oh, where are you from?" And my cousin said, "Canada." And he said, "Oh, no, Canada's a bloody big place. What part?" My aunt was totally mortified that he said the word bloody, that he swore, Like, oh no. But this was what he was like. And he was very personable and open as well. So for me, I'm in favour of the royal family, and the Duke himself played a massive part. And he was an amazing man. He's an amazing man. And he crashed his Range Rover, but was it 2 years ago? And overturned it, whatever. But driving his Range Rover at 97 years old or something, that's not many people be driving at that age. So you've got to hold respect for him.
Okay, so you mentioned the value of tradition that is represented by the royal family. What other values can you associate with the royals? Like, I for example, for me, it's duty.
Yeah.
Like from the time I was a little boy, my grandmother, actually both of my grandmothers, really reminded me in some ways of the Queen. And I'm from Germany, so I don't have the same like connection. But to me, I was just looking up to the Queen as this person of absolute duty, who never like showed weakness, so to speak. And especially the mother on my father's side, who I really wasn't close to. Like I'm not strong part of that line of the family, but she was so dutiful. She would like work every single day, and I saw similar qualities to the Queen in both of my grandmothers. And to me, that is the heart of Britain. And to me, I moved to Scotland. I didn't move to the UK, I moved to Scotland. But to me, the Queen is very, very much part of Scotland as well. And I said to somebody recently, I said, if politicians would call me into battle for the UK, I'm not sure if I would do it, but if the Queen would call me into battle, I would be right there immediately. So so for me, it's duty.
The monarchy, comes from Scotland, as far as I'm concerned. The Queen Mother was born in Glamis and from Glamis Castle, which, is one thing which is close to me here. But also, if you look at James the Sixth of Scotland, was James I of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom. So the first king of the United Kingdom was actually, when the Union was formed, he was actually the Scottish king. So for me, it's definitely part of Scottish history as well.
Dave, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just thinking, following on from what you said, Phil, I forget the word you used, but what they represent to me was stability, reliability. Your word was duty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's that sense of which families need of when I think of, I was with my son earlier today, and he's about to marry his male partner,
Mhm.
and he knows for me that has been a really difficult journey to walk with him, and I've had to tell him, my own position and so on. But what I'm determined to do is to maintain my relationship with him. He has an integrity about him that I have just encouraged him because he had to take a different course from what I would want. He has had to show integrity
Mhm.
in dealing with that. And I'm determined that I mirror that integrity and walk with him as far as I can in his journey. So sorry, that's not meant to be about me. It was
No, no,
this
but I
idea
think,
of this stability, this whatever.
and
I forgot.
I think, to be honest, Dave, I think that's a very good point, and I would like to actually connect that a little bit with what the story that Don was telling, because um, there is something that I experienced from the military, and obviously with Philip uh, having a strong connection to the military, there is an immediate kind of like something about reliability and trust, and it's instant. And I was in the military for 3 years, and I felt that there was no discrimination against me because I showed stability and I proved myself. And I think what you're talking about is proving your values and proving that you're reliable so people can trust you. And I think the fact that the vast majority of people in the UK are still standing behind the Queen. I'm not even saying the royal family, but the Queen is because of her stability, because like she has been a rock through every storm. And yeah, I think that goes to this stability that was also expressed in their marriage. I would like to ask Michael, what kind of values do you associate with the royal family, with Queen, with Philip?
Well, certainly, it wasn't too long ago that we thought monarchy had a divine right to rule, and we're anointed by God. So there's something sort of sacred about royalty, and it's something which makes it very, very different from republicanism, where we could end up with someone like Tony Blair being president, president of our country, which is a horrible, horrible thought. But like all institutions, I do think the monarchy is under attack in terms of, the cultural revolution.
Mhm.
And, I believe too much light has been shone onto the monarchy, and they're becoming a little bit too familiar. And it's the sort of the secrecy and the fact that the monarchy is not of this world. It's something slightly different. Um, uh, and we see from this sort of the most recent generation that there's so much of this world. They divorce. Um, they seek materialism. They seek popularity from the world. While I totally agree with you, Philip, that the Queen provides this stability across so many eras, and it seems to be detached. And it all does come down to this wonderful duty. And their marriage may not have been perfect, but they stayed together, and they clearly demonstrated a deep affection between each other. But I'm sure behind the scenes they'll have had their ups and downs, like any marriage. But what a wonderful role model! What a wonderful role model of family and commitment and longevity, and I suppose a real sort of love. So, I mean, I love the example that she set, but I do have serious concerns about these next generations and whether they can maintain the standards that couple set for us.
Yeah. I don't want to delve too much into that, but because you mention it, my view was always that the whole family doesn't need to be perfect, but the head of the family needs to be strong. And I think that especially the queen held the family together, even if there were big scandals. But she was so stoic and so in her place that through all the scandals, they made it through them. When a couple of weeks ago there was the dreadful Oprah Winfrey interview, some newspapers said, "Is this the end of the monarchy?" And I just thought, have you any idea what they've been through? This is just a tiny hiccup. It's nothing. Yes, it is a constant attack, and I dread to think what happens when we lose the queen. But I do think I see potential in William to step up and to become like a good and just king at one point. And we will see. Only time will tell. I would like to send the question over to Masedi. What values do you associate with the royal family or with the Queen and Prince Philip?
Well, for me, is looking in from the outside. I grew up in a country that was colonized by Britain, so obviously most of the things that we do here, in a way, it's aligned to how things are in Britain, or rather in the UK. So I grew up knowing of the Queen. They even call her Mama Sadinyana here. So like we grew up aware
what do they call her?
Mama Sadinyana, which can be translated to the mother of all nations.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yes. So I grew up aware of the royal family. But one of the two things that I would say for me, I've seen and it resonated with me when I think about them, is one, the value of family. They try, especially the Queen, she tries by all means never to show any kind of opinion concerning her family. She tries to always put her family first. And I know it's a tricky situation, because sometimes when the family is fighting, you don't know whose side you pick. But somehow she has managed to always try and find a balance, strike a balance between her family to make sure that they stay together, they stay united through whatever situation they faced. And that to me has always been, how does she do it? Because I'm sorry, but I come from a very large family, and sometimes we bump heads and we can take time without talking. But I've seen that from her. She tries to put it together, to bring them together and to try and work things out. And I know with the recent Oprah Winfrey interview, I don't know, I hope they can be able to overcome it as a family, because they're a good example of resilience. Like when I look at, because I grew up the Queen, having been the Queen for a very, very long time. So even when I was aware of her, it was many, many years later. But when I look at what she's been through, she had to be resilient through so many things. And I can't imagine how she's feeling right now with everything that she's been through, but she's always been resilient through everything. And yeah, I think so many times people tend to see the ugly and the negative things that we don't take a look at the positive things. I think recently I was talking to you, Philip. I said, how come she never has emotions? Because I didn't get why she never showed any emotions. And you said because, well, she needs to always be neutral. And I'm like, that takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of strength, as opposed to saying, this is how I feel, this is how I view things. So I think people should always try to look at the positive, not so much on the negative side. And again, this is like from somebody who's looking in outside. I might not have all the details as to what is happening, but that is just my opinion.
I think that speaks to in between. You said that kind of like they keep matters private, and I think that's another one of their values, keeping the matters private. And I think in our society today, it seems like we bring everything outside and we express everything immediately, every emotion, every weakness. And I've seen in communities here in Scotland, like local communities, that it can become very ugly if you take private matters too much outside, and it creates huge divisions in the communities, and it makes it so much harder to actually heal the wounds, because the wounds are in the end not just your wounds, but in case of the royal family, the wounds of the nation. That's why the publicity and this openness of the Oprah Winfrey interview is the complete opposite of what the royal family used to do, and I think should do, because now people are just thinking, how can they heal? And it shouldn't be like that. It should be a private matter because it's a family matter. I would like to move over to Colm and ask him about his views on values of the royal family. So far, we mentioned duty, tradition, stability, reliability, a divine aspect, and I would like to go into the divine aspect later again, and keeping matters private. What's your take?
Well, you've already laid the groundwork, so allow me to build on it, I suppose. The thing about, well, several things about monarchs and royal families, I personally also enjoy. To add to it, what's already been said for briefly, is they add a personal dimension to government. It's all too often nowadays we find that we're run by impersonal organizations and institutions and associations and groups and whatever other stuff you come up with, but the monarch should be a reminder that a person does run this country, and the person has the power over our lives to decide our futures in many ways, and that is important, not merely in a symbolic sense. A monarch, a king, a queen, properly carrying out their duties is a parent to the nation, is a mother to the nation, is a king, a father to the nation. I think Prince Philip, really took on, as a prince consort, took on more of a role as the uncle who was cheeky about everything, said things for kind of the sake of annoying everybody, but he also was always the one who slipped you a tenner and let you try his whiskey when your mum wasn't looking. So he seems to have done that. But then as a prince consort, he's not a king. That is a different role. It is a materially different role. It's not just a case of he doesn't get to wear a crown. And like other people have said, the monarchy, it's a sign of tradition. Tradition is important for reasons other than just being it's the way things are done. It's a sign of stability, which is very important. Modern politics thrives off of scandal and controversy, whereas monarchies do the reverse. They survive off of being dignified, of being above the storm, of also being able to survive storms when they come. We've seen them. I'm too young to remember the great kind of scandals of the 90s when it really did look as though the monarchy was in serious danger. But thankfully, not even Tony Blair could do that much damage to the country. So there's that. So I suppose something there to be grateful for in The Crown is that it is in many ways the direct opposite and contradiction of what so many of our modern politicians are, which is always changing, ever new, seeking out controversy, seeking out some scandal, always looking for an excuse to air their dirty washing, and also everyone else's too while they're at it. Whereas a monarchy allows, because of their nature, they don't get involved in scraps. They're all actively encouraged to keep out of them. And that allows a nation to look up to its leaders. It allows the people to look up to their final authority as something that is denied, that is to an extent outside their control. But when have you ever had a manager who, or a boss, or a teacher, or a parent even, who you could freely control and manipulate?
Okay, thank you. Fraser, would you like to add something to that, or do you want to stay in the background?
No. When I heard the news, I was sitting in my van and I heard the news and I knew, yeah, it was a shock. And for me, I think just thinking over the last sort of year, the Queen is the backbone when it comes to Christian values in the UK, and that's one thing that she has kept. She's the one that's kept the morals, the Christian morals, and both of them, because of what they've stood for, they've kept those Christian morals. And I fear that now that he's gone, now usually a lot of couples who've been together for so long, if one passes away, it's not long before the other one usually naturally goes because of a broken heart or circumstances, because they've been together. They're literally joined at the hip constantly. It's like twins almost. And that's usually what would happen. My fear, and I believe that, there's going to be a major movement due to the churches that have been closed over the year, and because they've been closed, God's going to move, and I believe that. But I know that I fear that whoever comes in next, whether it is Charles or William, that how much of the backbone of the Queen, which will probably they become the Queen Mother, or depending on how it works, and whatever happens, that what will, because how will these values stay within of what she is ingrained in her legacy as the Queen into the UK. And at the moment, as we know, if it wasn't for the Queen, the whole thing everything just literally go to the dogs, and we would not have Christian values would be out the window. We'd be, it'd be Muslim prayers, everything galore. It'd be taking over the streets literally, which is a shame, and everything else going on with it. So it's kind of almost like it was a darkness. It was a slight, so when he's gone, you just knew, right? Yeah. It's almost like that. It's just exactly going into it's almost like when Easter, when Jesus died, that darkness. It was that sort of sense you knew that, right, something's going to happen. Anyway,
thank you. I would like to highlight one thing that we haven't mentioned so far, and that's hierarchy. Because one thing that is essential to the monarchy and to the royal family is hierarchy. And the question is how important. Oh, okay. Before I go into a hierarchy, I want to tell a little story from Germany in regards to the divine aspect of the royal family, their God-given duty, so to speak. In Germany, we don't have a royal family anymore, and we have a president Bundespräsident, and he is a little bit similar to the Queen, doesn't have political power and has representative power, but he is elected. And it means absolutely nothing to me as a German, because he's there for what, 4 years, maybe 8 years, and then he or she is gone, and he didn't grow up to represent the country. He didn't grow up to have a certain set of values, to actually be the embodiment of the country. Therefore, it was always completely meaningless to me. And I always looked over to the UK with envy, saying, you have somebody you can hold accountable, who is as Fraser said, the backbone of the country, who should represent everything that's good about the country. Of course, people can argue, do they really represent that? But that's their job. And I always thought that our German version of just electing a random person who didn't actually do, like, work for it, do something to gain this position, it meant nothing to me. So I just wanted to throw that in from an outsider's point of view. Now, in regards to hierarchy, because I want to bring it over a little bit into our own life and into families of everyday people, and I want to ask, how important are hierarchies in our families? Do we still respect our elderlies? Do we use their wisdom and their long life as a source of information and wisdom? And also, do we still understand that children are children? Do the children still understand that they are children? With these questions, I'm throwing it out to you, and you just raise your hand if you want to say something about this idea.
Okay. Yeah, I think it depends on who you are and what age you are. I think there's a point, I would respect my elders to a degree, and I would respect their views and look up to them for many years. But I don't think many of the younger ones today have the same kind of view. I don't think it's quite the same as it was. And I don't think, especially at the moment with the current SNP policies and government policies and the teaching in schools, I don't think children are allowed to be children as long as they used to. I think there's a lot more push to them to understand things, really early age. I've just finished doing a blog article on looking at the RSHP material, predominantly looking at it from a father's perspective at my daughter's age. So I've looked at what they call their level 1 and level 2, and this is aimed at primary school children, primaries 2 and 3, and then 2, 3, and 4, and then 5, 6, and 7. And my daughter's in 4 going into stage 5, and I don't think the material, I wouldn't want her learning about a lot of it's fine, a lot of it's good, but some of the topics that they're putting on, especially, they're actually quite explaining to children at that age what sex is, what homosexuality is. And I think the concept, is alien. I think talking about relationships and, you can love different people and things like that, and families can be made up of different people and different formats, and some children live with their grandparents and things like that are fine. But when you bring sexualization and that into an early age, and I think that's the problem that we've got at the moment.
Michael.
They're a great example of a family that doesn't fragment, isn't it? Because they've got the long history. And I know the Scottish Family Party sort of believes in this, that this whole narrative of the family, and that everybody's connected, whether it's grandparents, grandchildren, the history of that family, that legacy of the family, we all should have that sort of thing. And modern families fragment so quickly. They either break up, or the children leave and they go to universities miles away and they never, ever come back again. But you see the royal family, they get together the whole time. They might have daggers drawn, but they're on the royal balcony. They attend events, cousins, second cousins. They keep in touch, and that's a great model. And they give the appearance of unification, while the modern family is one of fragmentation and breakdown. And certainly the Duke appeared as the sort of the patriarch, even though the Queen was the matriarch of us all. And someone made that point earlier, and I thought it was a lovely point. We look to her as the sort of the mother of the nation. I think in terms of the family, he was the patriarch, and he, it appeared he was trying to develop Prince Charles and the grandchildren, and he sort of fulfilled this role. So they played at this unification of a family with a legacy, and it's a great model for us.
Just real quick, I heard the other day, and I'm going to misquote it slightly, unfortunately, but I heard that Prince Philip was the only person who treated the Queen as a person.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's when you talked about the patriarchal thing. I think that he, even though she was the Queen and he knew his place in the royal hierarchy, he also knew his place in the family hierarchy, and he knew that she needed a rock herself, somebody who could be firm with her. And would you agree with that, Michael?
Yeah, I mean that's a lovely expression, and I'm sure in terms. Someone said earlier how she doesn't show any emotion whatsoever. She's dutiful. She doesn't get overexcited about things. She's very straight-laced, but I'm sure she needs to relax, with someone who treats her as a fellow human being. So that's a wonderful story, Philip, and I'm sure she needed that safety valve.
Mm-hmm. I would like to ask Mercedes something, because Michael just mentioned that the royal family, that they invite, like, that the whole family is interconnected. And Mercedes, I know you've got a very, very large family and you're always interconnected. And I know that you have like WhatsApp groups where you pray for each other and stuff like that. And I think that's really wonderful that you live in Botswana and that you have this connectedness between families. And I think that is something that we in the West should learn from. Can you tell us a little bit about this connectedness of the family?
Okay. Well, the thing is that, and our family is different from other families within the country. I wouldn't say that it's standard across the whole country. But for me, I grew up first of all, I lost my mom when I was very, very young. So I was raised by my aunt, which I think allowed me to have closeness with my extended family. But beyond that, growing up with my aunt and also growing up from time to time with my grandmother, it allowed me to have closeness with my great-grandmother, which I still have to this day. So I grew up, to this day, I don't know the difference between an extended family and a nuclear family, because for us, as long as you are a bloodline of my great-grandmother, be it by marriage, be it anyhow, you are part of family. And we try by all means to keep together. We try by all means to stick together, even if sometimes it's by force. And when I say by force, I mean actual, like we would pick a day that we need to meet on such and such a day. We have established, we have a written document with all the rules and regulations that govern our family. And I know it's an extreme to a certain degree, but this was because from time to time, we would not treat every family member the same. I'll give an example. From time to time, it might seem like we would attend a certain extended family members' events rather than the other one. So we had to sit down together and say, you know how are we going to be operating as a family? We sat down, we created a document that governs that. Every 2 years or so, we vote for a family representative for the whole family so that we can keep in check with one another. And I know everybody here is like, what? You guys do what? But I've realized that it has allowed us to have closeness. It has allowed us to have connection. And as weird as it seems, I would say I know I have about 170 something cousins, plus or minus, but I would know 80% of those because I was raised to know the importance of family. I was raised to understand that my family is important. And on top of that, my grandmother was okay.
No, finish, please finish.
Okay, I was gonna say, on top of that, my grandmother was the second born, which then means that her kids are looked at as leaders of the family. So even though, and also my mom was the firstborn, so even though I'm younger than my aunts and my other cousins, people still look at me to say, well, according to hierarchy in our family, one way or the other, you're one of the people that we expect leadership from. So I would say our family tries to mold us to understand the importance of family. And it is very crazy, especially with that large amount of people around. But
okay,
it has.
I'm gonna interrupt you, so that we don't get too far into the culture of Botswana. We will talk about that another day. The question is, what happened in the West? What happened in Western countries that we lost families to such a degree? And of course, there was industrialization, I would say. There was the fact that people had to move around a little bit more. But then, is it fair to say that in the last 40 years, 50 years, there was an acceleration of destruction of the family, including the nuclear family, due to an extreme push towards freedom instead of duty and commitment? Colm.
Right. There has definitely been a decline in the last 50 years amongst families. I'm not sure whether I put that down to something like, say, industrialization. I think that kind of change we are capable of surviving. Britain was an industrial country for about 100 and something years before we began to see a serious decline in the quality of marriages and of families. It's much more likely the war and the subsequent years had a much greater effect. Although exactly how that happened, I and a great many others could only really guess.
Just to clarify, when I said when I meant industrialization, I thought, for example, that due to industrialization, women could actually enter the workforce more easily because hard labor and stuff like that, which obviously made them a little bit more free. Then we had contraception, and then you had other things like divorce being made more easily. So everything is a little bit connected. I didn't mean that industrialization was the only thing.
Yeah. Again, that women going into the workforce, I would put that down to the wars, to the world wars, much more than anything else. It was the absence of men in the workplace that allowed women to fill that role. But certainly the 60s seemed to be a turning point when you began to see, certainly in Britain at least, divorce laws are relaxed. Contraceptives become much more available, much more scientific. Abortion is legalized, somewhat through the back door, but nonetheless, it happens. And it's a situation which only gets worse and worse. I mean, it's that way of, people call the slippery slope a logical fallacy, but it keeps coming true. In that you push the door a bit, and then a bit more, and then a bit more. And so for example, the first time divorce laws were legalized, it was hardly anything. It was, well, it was you. Both sides had now had grounds for infidelity, and then it became, well, he's abusive, and then it became also, well, we don't really live together anymore, and then it became, well, I don't really have a reason. I just want to get a divorce. And that has definitely had a part to play, as well as there has been a breakdown of respect and authority between people and between generations. I mean, it's no longer taken for granted that children will respect their parents, for example. I think there has been a decline in authority, possibly to a degree, perhaps even a decline in respectability to parents as well, because I know some people who grew up, they had quite bad relationships with their parents. They had very little respect for their parents. They were much closer to their grandparents for a variety of reasons. And to be honest with you, some of them I knew, if I was in their position, I wouldn't respect their parents if they were mine. And it's become much easier in our society for the kind of for a family to fall apart and for people to suffer all of the consequences apart from, like, say, the old economic consequence of a family without two parents couldn't support itself. Whereas nowadays the state will support a one-parent family, which means there is no reason for a couple to tough it out through a hard time. They can't just simply fall apart. And thanks to there being no longer any stigma to divorce, they can get a divorce. They can then both get legally remarried, it's in a civil sense, and kind of essentially start from the beginning. And where does that? But I mean, they can start from the beginning, but where does that leave their children, assuming they have any?
I would like to take something that you said back to the royal values, because you said that some children don't respect their parents, and so often for a very good reason. And I do think that often has to do with the fact that they are usually often not dutiful, they're not stable, not respectable. So they themselves don't represent certain values, and then it's very hard to respect them. Would you agree with that?
Yes, certainly. I think it's if you have a parent who is absent very often, who who doesn't really set boundaries, who will play around and not in the innocent sense, who doesn't take control and direct their own life, then, because I think children have, expectations for what a parent should be. I think they can't voice it and they can't articulate it, but I think there is something inside a child which looks for something when they see a parent, and if they don't get that, then they don't really have anywhere else to look, so they end up becoming disillusioned. And I think Prince Philip and the Queen especially were very good at being respectable, at being kind of in control, at being kind of calm in a crisis.
Yeah. Apart from the royal family, and I think the problem with the royal family is that in some ways they are quite removed from us. I do think there is also a problem with the lack of positive role models of parents. What it actually means to be a good father. When you turn on the TV, every time a father is presented, they're bumbling idiots, and there's no. The parents are usually not a team. They're more often than not portrayed almost as enemies. And I think that these values need to be presented in wider society. And I do blame the media for being a big part in the destruction of family values by constantly just showing the negative side. Dave?
Yes, I can't resist saying this. I'm not quite sure whether it is quite in line with the question you were asking, but I believe it's such a significant thing for me. I believe a lie has been sown into our society about the very subject of love. And I think there is an equation within our society of attraction, which is a wonderful feeling, and we have that phrase falling in love, which I don't particularly like, but it kind of sums up the attraction side. But to me, love is a commitment. It's not, there's the initial attraction, but then the working out of that relationship requires commitment. so that when the storms come, you work through the difficulties. And it really, well, it actually breaks my heart at times seeing couples separate when I kind of, in my gut, I know they don't need to.
Yep. Yeah. I would say it's almost encouraged now to break up. And by the way, I would urge everybody to watch the first episode of Let's Talk About, where we talked about marriage and relationship. And we initially talked about what we think is important for a relationship, and a lot of the young people that participated, like, love was not the most important point. It was much more trust and being reliable and commitment. And it was clear to everybody that it's work. The thing is, and I completely agree with you, Dave, it's a lie. Love doesn't just happen. It's work, and it our hormones often confuse us and portray it as if it's not work and if it comes easily, but that's the lie. It's you should be aware from the first moment that you have to work on yourself and you have to work on the relationship. Done.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it's this whole thing's interconnected with Christian values as well. So, for me, the fact that, the Queen is probably the only head of, or leader in the country that you do see going to church. And she goes to church, every Sunday when they're at Sandringham, they're at church. They have their own church in Windsor. I'm not sure what they do when they're at when they're at Buckingham Palace, but it's known that they go to church. And when she gives her speeches, she does talk about God and she does praise. And that is a value that at the end of the war, with all these other things, there's a combination of things, but people stopped going to church, and church has been seen as, for boring. So those values of love and marriage that are instilled within those traditional countries, Christian values, and the values of the country, because Scotland and United Kingdom have been formed on those Roman sort of Christian, Catholic values from centuries ago. Those are being eroded, and so that doesn't help. And I think that affects it. And I think, the disappointing thing is you don't see Boris Johnson going to church. You don't see Nicola Sturgeon going to church. And for me, that's what's missing within the leadership. And that's what the Queen and the royal family do show. And it's important. And I think we need more of that. I mean, it would be great to see more of them doing that and get involved in things and doing that as well. And I think the funerals and weddings are the biggest events that you see, within the royal family. And there will be a big funeral. There'll be an outpouring. Princess Diana's funeral, for example, was just phenomenal, what that did. And, there was the church element to that. So it'll be interesting to see if we could bring that back. That's what we need to bring back.
By the way, in regards to like the Christian values, as far as I know, I think if you would ask most Muslims, for example, and I'm not so sure about the Hindu communities, but if you would ask most Muslims, I think they would appreciate if our politicians and country leaders were more devout Christians. Because to people of other faiths, they usually say, I'd rather have somebody of a different faith but with similar values than people with no values.
Faith,
So
yeah, and that's what we see at the moment. That's what we see within the government, in Scotland, and that's why we are existing as a party. It's those values. So whether you're Christian or not, if you have those inherent values for the the traditional values that comes from that's what we want to portray and put back in place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to ask you some last statements, because we're going a little bit over an hour now. Some last thoughts about what you wish for the royal family, and also what you wish for us as the UK and most importantly, Scotland, what would you like to see happening? Raise your hands. You're all invited. Dave.
I would like to see the next generation of the royal family embodying those same values. I hope, I don't like jumping over Charles because he would be the next natural heir. But I suspect I see more of the values of the current Queen, I think, in William. I'm hopeful. I am. William and Kate. We need to pray for them, I guess. That's the bottom of it. But yeah, that would be my hope.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Michael.
I mean, in the 60s, there was a very popular monarch in Belgium called King Baudouin of the Belgians. And when the abortion law came before the Belgian parliament, he insisted that he resigned, he abdicated from the throne when that act was passed, and then he was reinstated afterwards because he couldn't have his name to the Abortion Act. And I think the same thing was really happening to the Queen because she's Christian. She saw this bill that she has to countersign, the 68 Abortion Act, and she stumbled at that hurdle. And I think she compromised herself. And I believe there will be other major moral issues confronting Charles or William. And I wonder whether they're going to have the moral fortitude and the strength to say, this I can't do. This is a step too far. And I think the Queen was deeply, she was divided about what she should do. And of course, it's not, there's a whole load of courtiers. I mean, someone talked about, I think it was you, Colm, about organizations and corporates and bodies. And I mean, in a way, the royal family is a whole series of courts and advisors and specialists. I mean, it's a great big team. And I think the advisors pushed her towards signing that act. And that's a disgraceful thing to have done. And I know, and I'm sure she had problems signing it. So my wish would be in the future for whoever is the monarch, that when the big moral decisions have to be made, and there are a whole load coming up down the track, like the euthanizing of our aging population, that they've got the gumption to say, no, I cannot countersign this as monarch. I have to abdicate.
Yeah. I think the insidious trick is that they try to phrase these laws as built on compassion. But unfortunately, and in some cases, I can understand this, but unfortunately, once you open the door to these things, all of a sudden you have 300,000 abortions a year, and it will not stop there, unfortunately. And this is where I really have to hold the conservative parties accountable, because they have never really fought back. Every time they lost a fight, they did not fight back afterwards. They did not reclaim ground they have lost. They just slowed down the decay. Masedi, what do you wish for the royal family and for the values of Scotland and the UK? You're silenced at the moment.
Okay. For me, I hope that they can unite as a family. I hope that regardless of when the Queen passes, hopefully many months from now, that whoever is in charge will try to uphold her values and her principles. And I just hope that I wish I wish her values for family could pour out to everyone in the UK.
Thank you. Thank you. Colm?
I would like to see for the family sort of us being, as a nation, more willing to adopt the values that the Queen seems to practice. If you could sum up the Queen in a way, you would say, she's probably the most British person there is. So now, kind of obvious. So why shouldn't we also try to be a bit more like that? And I think I see a difficult time ahead for the family, certainly for the Queen. I think we shouldn't skip over Charles. Once you start having monarchs by popularity, you open yourself up to a terrible constitutional mess. So whether it be as Charles III, really it should be fourth, but or George VII, then may his reign be happy. It won't be very long, and I think Prince William will be much closer to the Queen in terms of how he conducts himself and how he behaves as a monarch when it's his turn to come around. I certainly, this is a pipe dream for me, but I certainly hope that perhaps one day, maybe not the Queen, but one of her successors in the not too distant future reaches a point where they are willing to do as, like I said, King Baldwin, King Baldwin of the Belgians, or the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, was it Grand Duke Jean, when they were confronted with a crisis, they were willing to say no. Now, it's been 310 years since the last time a monarch said no to Parliament, but I think there has to come a time when the monarch reuses that power, and kind of whether it is the case that they are formally stripped of the powers to give royal assent, or they have to abdicate for the day, or then I think so be it. At least the monarch has proven that they stand for something and they can still be leaders. Or maybe what my favourite outcome would be to do what the Princes of Liechtenstein did, which was challenge their parliament in a referendum over whether or not the prince's power should be restricted or expanded. The Prince of Liechtenstein won that vote by 76%. So clearly his politicians weren't as popular as they thought they were. And I can very easily see the same thing happening here. I think if you were to put up a choice, who would you rather have the final executive, legislative, judicial power, be it 10 Downing Street or Buckingham Palace, then I guarantee you, no politician is ever going to have that fight, because that war will be over before it starts.
That is very true. Thank you so much, Colm. Thank you so much for your insight. Don?
Yeah, I just think that it'd be good to see that the royal family bounce back and become what they should be, and whether that be through, the Queen, I think there's still some time left in her. I don't think, I do know what Fraser was saying, that quite often people have been that close for only been married 73 years and, like two peas in a pod. It'll be difficult for her, but she's that dedicated to the country. She won't give up. It may be a chance for her to step back, but I wouldn't want to see that yet. I think, there's always been a question. The marriage that they have portrayed, has been fantastic. I saw this picture, the really fantastic picture of her coming back from a trip, and the Duke of Edinburgh dressed up as a guardsman to welcome her, in disguise to trick her. So he's standing there at the gate with a beefeater on as well, just smirking at her. And she walks up and she sees him, and she's just got this lovely grin. And you could just, from that captures, something that we probably would never normally see, that relationship they had. And that is there because both their sons haven't had that kind of marriage. Both those sons have lost it, they've been divorced. And what we need is then potentially the next generation. We've also got a problem with William, but Harry, problem with Harry, and his outbursts and stuff as well. And he's rebelling against the institution, and some people, it will help them. They'll need to help them modernize. But William has been a stalwart. William and Kate, they are the model royals that you probably would want, that everyone looks up at, and there's an opportunity for them to really bounce back and show those values. So I'd probably look to William to take up that mantle as well.
Thank you very much, Don. And I'm going to give the final word to Fraser. And I would like to thank Fraser for organizing this live stream. That was awesome. That was really exciting. I like that. And I'm very much looking forward to more of them. And I hope that I'm going to have some of you as my guests again. And Fraser, please also tell people where they can find you and where they can find this podcast, not podcast.
This is your podcast.
Yeah.
No, you can connect with me via Facebook, LinkedIn under my name, Fraser Ramsey. You can, if you're Instagram, you'll find me under Fraser60B. I'm on Twitter as well. So, but you can find me. I'm connected with Philip and on Michael on Facebook and things. So if you're looking, happy to, reach out, network if you want, not a problem. On the final note of the conversation, maybe just thinking of what the people were saying, maybe whatever happens, whatever the Queen decides, whatever in the road that she goes down from now on, obviously we don't know literally what is going on behind the scenes, what we don't see, what we now, just briefly touching on listening to a lot of the interviews of the family, the kids, what they're talking about is they say the Queen, he was this and that. End of the day, behind the scenes, they're probably just a normal Joe Bloggs family, really, just saying hi, mummy, hi, daddy, hi, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? They're probably that is probably just normal that we just don't see. And looking at it, I just hope that maybe whatever she decides over the next few weeks, months, once the funeral's been, and what she's thinking, because obviously her whole objective to life is going to change now. What's she going to do? I'm sure it's going to be discussed. And I hope maybe she will I think maybe me and Charles he's been down a rocky road in his own life. You've got Harry, who's is the rebellious one out of the two. And maybe sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because Diana was not exactly squeaky clean either. So you've got to, hopefully that maybe just if he does become king or whatever happens, that he will realize that she's going to be talking to him. She's no pushover. His mother's no pushover, and she will have a stern word teaching lesson to him to say, if you're going, this is going to be coming your turn soon. They'll be discussing whatever down the line. I'm sure they do it anyway. It'll be announced and whatever, but they will have that. I'm sure he will. Maybe when he becomes king, it'll be a different person. We didn't believe. He will hold fast to the values. He will hold fast to his mother's legacy. He will do the right thing. And he's 72. He might live 10 years. He might live another 20 years. He might live until he's nearly the same age as his mother. We don't know if he becomes king. We don't know when he's going to become king. But we just don't know that. And at the end of the day, we're all living longer anyway these days because of the way the health is. And so,
well, we'll see. We'll see what comes.
We'll see.
Well, maybe there's going to be another virus going through the country.
on a basic note, I think in general, it's been good to discuss this, and it was a tragic news on Friday for the whole of the UK and to many people, because technically he has been with us all our lives since those who have known of them. So he is like the sort of the grandfather of the UK in a sense that he's gone. So what happens next will be interesting, and especially just in general what's going forward. It'll be interesting, and it's been great hosting this, moderating as well, and these discussions, and they're healthy, and it's great, and it's been interesting, and happy to support you guys in going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would like to urge everybody to obviously vote for us, vote for the Scottish Family Party. If you agree with our values, it doesn't matter if you're a royalist or not, monarchist or not. But if you agree that family is the most important building stone of our society, and if you think that at the moment our society is not doing well, then please support the Scottish Family Party. Consider becoming a member and go to our website. That is scottishfamily.uk. Is that correct, Michael?
.org.
.org. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel that you're watching this on. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can go in the green room, okay, if you want to hang off.
Oh, go in the green room.